So there's this Abba and Preach video that I really want to talk about because I feel like it relates to me, and I think that it can relate to a lot of people, especially online, a lot of content creators. I want to talk about it. And as usual, if you guys want to watch the entire video uninterrupted, I'm going to link it down below. You guys are going to watch it uninterrupted. Otherwise, I'm going to take segments out of this video and talk about only the important aspects that I find interesting. So let's watch it.
To be honest, I don't want to live in the United States of America if it's not majority white. Once it becomes majority non-white, it's man. So I understand the fear of white people want to live in a country that's majority non-white.
But they're not the only guys that talk like this.
America is a nation, not just from an economic standpoint, but we also have an identity too, a cultural identity. And I'll tell you guys this too. As someone who's a first generation American, my family's from Sudan, etc., I should not be saying this stuff, but I'm going to be honest. A lot of these guys that come from the third world, to include my old homeland, come here and scam. And the reality is, if we want America to stay America, we got to keep it majority white. We got to keep it the way it was founded.
But there was a time.
I want to talk about that really quick because I think that this is a huge misconception, and it's unfortunate that the term white has encompassed so many cultures that it's kind of like given this impression that it came up with so much. So let me go ahead and just say this, okay? So when we talk about white people, you got to remember that white people is just more or less a term that was exclusive for Anglo-Americans here in America, okay? It didn't include a lot of the Southern Europeans. You guys got to remember that a lot of the Southern Europeans, when they came here, were heavily discriminated against. Irish, Italians, Greeks, Spaniards, Portuguese, all of these guys, including Polish, all of these guys were all heavily discriminated. And what's absolutely important is that a lot of this has been whitewashed, which I know that some people are going to get super technical. Well, that's what white people are. White people are people who come from Europe. That is your interpretation of what white is here in America, but in Europe, it's not exactly like that. Now, this is important because oftentimes people whitewash a lot of what goes on in America without giving credit to the actual cultures. I'll give you guys an example. The Italian mafia. Unfortunately, the mafia followed the immigrants that wanted a better life to the US, and this particular element, cultural element of Italians, was used to shame Italians constantly, over and over. And then as decades went on, the mafia, it gradually weakened, and it ended up providing some of the most interesting classical hits of cinema when it came to the mob, the mafia. You know, the Godfather 1, Godfather 2, Casino, Goodfellas, all of that was Italian inspired. But a lot of Americans here will say, oh yeah, that's white culture. No, that's Italian culture. But you guys want to include all of these other Europeans into your term white, so then it can seem like it's so much more influential, when that's not the case. And I know that a lot of Latinos and Hispanic people are suffering at the hands of these white Americans. Trust me when I say that you guys are eventually going to be seen as a white, because if you guys have seen the demographics of this country, more and more Hispanics are starting to integrate into this country. And so that means that eventually, when you guys are fully integrated, or they finally recognize you guys, or they see that the white race is diminishing, they're probably most likely going to absorb you guys into the culture to make it seem like, no, white folks have been increasing in numbers the entire time. And I know that there's a very high possibility of this happening, because if you guys have seen Italians, Spaniards, Portuguese, Greeks, bro, sometimes I can't even tell them apart from Hispanics. And from what I've seen, Hispanics have about 30 to like 60, maybe even 70% of European blood. So these guys oftentimes can pass off as if they're European. All right, so this is another segment here that I think is absolutely important to talk about. Let's talk about it.
This is where the Hodge twins get their Negro wake-up call. So the Hodge twins go on to Twitter, and then they put this message. Hey, Arval, I know your community is whites only, but could you make exceptions for us two Negroes? We're not even full sub-Saharan. We are over 40% white. And Arval says this. God bless the Hodge twins. But no.
Yeah, what do you thought was about to happen? You black too. What you thought? That it was... I don't even know how I gotta explain this to people.
Yo.
You black.
Yo, I don't say this very often, but you're genuinely you're simping for white supremacy.
Yes.
I want to talk about this, okay? This is why I think it's absolutely important that if you're a person of color, or if you're a black person, you have to be very careful with what you say, especially about your own race, because unfortunately, when you perpetuate these stereotypes or these racist statements, unfortunately, even though you're black and you feel like you're doing justice by calling out your own race, which you can do definitely, but if you're doing it in a way that gives off the implication that all of the black folks are a part of that crime or that behavior, you don't make yourself or any of the other members in your group look good. I'll go ahead and use the Italians once again to show you guys what I mean, okay? I'm sorry, Italians, I don't mean to pick on you guys, but take a listen to these two statements and tell me which one's more accurate. One, the Italians brought over the mafia when they immigrated to the US. Or two, the Italians immigrated to the US and unfortunately the mafia followed them as a result. Which one do you think sounds more accurate? Because if I say that the Italians brought over the mafia, then the implication is that the Italians, before they boarded the ship to go to the US, were talking about bringing a member of the mafia because they are a man of great honor and respect. Like, no one said that, bro. But that's what the Hodge twins and Myron do. They make it sound like all black people are complicit in the behavior of the very few. And inadvertently, they end up harming themselves in the process, because not only are they going to discriminate against the black race, but also they're going to discriminate against Myron and the Hodge twins because they're also black. And you can clearly see that Arval, he clearly thinks that they're black. And if he's saying no because he thinks that you guys are black, then most likely he's thinking these guys are going to impure our community. And I don't think that Myron and the Hodge twins understand that, because when you perpetuate these stereotypes or these impure perspectives of black folks, what you're doing is you're making it much more harder for future generations to adapt to the environment. And what's absolutely insane to me is that these guys are feeling the pressure. You know, I don't know if they're choosing to acknowledge it or to ignore it, but the fact that they're being told that no, you can't go into this community, that's a sign that you're black, bro. When a white supremacist tells Myron that you also got to leave the country, bro, you're dark skinned. I don't know if he's black, but you're definitely dark-skinned. That's the racism that people online admonish you about. And when you perpetuate these stereotypes, the future generations are the ones that feel it. You may not feel the huge impact now, but later on, they are going to feel it. And a good example of this is, you know, slavery. I mean, look at the Anglo-Americans. They practiced slavery, and look at the horrors that came out from that. And at the time, they felt powerful. They felt like it was the right thing to fight for. But look at the Anglo-Americans now. The future generations of today are feeling that pressure, whether they're choosing to ignore it or staying neutral or perhaps experiencing white guilt. They're feeling the pressure. And that's what Myron and the Hodge twins are doing to the black community. The black community is going to feel it in the future. Aside from the fact that they're already experiencing racism, who's to say that a brand new form of racism that is much more impactful, much more greater than what they're experiencing now, because of this rhetoric, who's to say that something like that won't develop? And look, man, if you want to hold your own race to account, that's fine. You can do that. But please be mindful of what you say, because what you say definitely comes back around, and your race is definitely going to pay the price, and you are going to be no exception. Now, this is going to be the last point I'm going to touch on. Listen to what Ava has to say, because I definitely relate to this, and I can definitely see a lot of people online that execute this type of behavior.
And don't go out of my way to make sure that they celebrate their blackness. I know my values, so I'm okay. But I did recognize that over time, after I did a lot of this repeated content, the kind of people that would be drawn to it would be people who would often say horrible things about black people in general. And I started looking at it very, very differently, because sometimes you cannot be part of a movement, but if you operate online in the same way that that movement does, then you might as well just be another agent for them.
You're a contributor.
And I get it too, because online, I'll be honest with you guys, if you're on YouTube, you want to get the quickest paycheck, be a minority, talk shit about the minority, you'll get a right-wing audience like this. If you're even half funny and charismatic, you'll shoot up to millions very quickly. And I've seen it with other creators where they are one way, then they start doing this kind of content. And what happens is that insidiously, very in the back of their minds, something starts creeping in where it's audience capture. You get this backlash from the audience, which is incredibly positive, which maybe with backlash doesn't work, but you get what I'm trying to say. And then you're constantly reaffirmed that you're correct, and that you're based, and that you're blah, blah, blah. And then you start redoing that content, and it gets bigger and bigger. And by the time you know it, you're like captured by your audience. That's why a lot of these guys can't say anything bad about their side openly, because the kind of feedback they get is so negative that they're almost pressured to do that. I'm incredibly proud when I put out a video and you guys disagree with me, and I don't take it down, and I don't feel bad. Now, if I'm wrong, I'll do another follow-up video and I'll admit it. But I will never be mad by the fact that I'm not beholden to you, the audience, when it comes to my values. These people will sell their soul, they'll sell their kids' future, they'll sell anything, because the feedback loop they get for being different is too strong.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about this because this is absolutely true. Bro, you guys have no idea, man. Like, there are times where I wish I could just dive into one niche. But what I found is that when you cater to just one niche of people, man, do they show a lot of love. But if you call them out, you immediately get backlash. I like to think that I have a very diverse audience, and I feel like I do because every single time I put out content, and it's content that I know people are going to disagree with, I could see the people who unsubscribe immediately because I say something that they find very controversial. When I see that I am losing subscribers, it makes me feel terrible. I feel like I can't go out of my own boundaries, but I'm glad that I do because I know for a fact that what I'm saying is what I truly believe. And it's times like those where it makes me want to just dive into one niche and just cater to that niche. Because I've seen a lot of these small content creators the same size of my channel who they start off in the same pace, but because they cater to a certain audience, to a certain right-wing audience, the red pill or the drama channels, you know how the drama channels just, they hate on content creators without actually understanding the nuance behind their behavior. If I do that, I know that I will grow fast and I will feel incredibly terrible if I'm providing all of this content that is very superficial, there is no substance to it, and a lot of people are consuming it. It would just make me feel incredibly terrible. And I can't do that, man. But it's absolutely tempting. The offer is there. But that's just from my point of view. I can only imagine that for some or most of the audience members that view me, I'm sure that you guys have found content creators who just completely taint either your ethnicity, your political party, or your social status. Oftentimes you just want to grab these people and give them your lifestyle so then they can experience what you experience, because oftentimes people don't care about what a person experiences. So long as it gets the clicks and utter the rhetoric that makes them the money, at the end of the day, these guys will remain inconsiderate of your lifestyle. But yeah, you guys let me know what you guys think about that. I'll go ahead and end it here.